Wakes everybody up.
That's the one if you want to cut everybody off. If somebody's
Cuts
going
everybody
it cuts all the other guys off.
Oh, I love that button.
That's why we didn't tell you.
That goes to 11. All right. Good morning. Will the February 26, 2013 meeting of the Contractors State Licensing Board come to order? I'm Paul Schaffino, Board Chair. Would Mark Thurman, Secretary, please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Please rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to note that Bob Lamb has an excused absence today. Aaron, would you please take roll?
David Beer.
Here.
Joan Hancock.
Here.
Pastor Herrera Jr.
here.
Matthew Kelly.
Here.
Bob Lamb. Ed Lang.
Here.
Jim Miller.
Here.
Lisa Miller-Strunk. Here. John
Here.
Bruce Rush.
Here.
Frank Shetter.
Here.
Paul Schaffino.
Here.
And finally, Mike Thurman.
Here.
Now, will members of the board, senior staff, and members of the audience please introduce themselves? I'd like to advise the members of the public that identification by members of the public is voluntary. Members of the board, please remember to hit your microphone.
John O'Rourke, board member.
Jim Miller, board member. Rick Lopes, Chief of Public Affairs. Pastor Herrera, board member.
Matt Kelly, board member.
David Fote, Chief of Enforcement.
Dave Diaz, board member.
Mark Thurman, board member.
Steve Sands, registrar.
Paul Schaffino, board member.
Joan Hancock, board member.
Cindy Christensen, Chief Deputy Registrar.
Frank Shetter, board member.
Ed Lang, board member.
Karen Robinson, Chief of Licensing. Lisa Miller-Strunk, board member.
Bruce Rust, board member. Don Chang, legal counsel.
Members of the public or staff?
Labors Local 67, asbestos and lead labors.
You want to introduce yourselves, or?
Only if you want. You're not required.
Vice President of Licensed Construction Schools.
Alex Beltran, District Council 16.
Joe Upchurch, District Council 16.
Heidi Hill, Chief of Safety, CSLB. Norman Denville, Public Affairs, CSLB.
Steve Rain, Public Affairs, CSLB.
Jane Carter, Public Affairs, CSLB.
Ted Rieger, North Comfort News.
Shauna Krause, Capital Services. Debbie Johnson, Contractors Licensing Board, Stacy Paul, Veteran Office, CSLB.
Larry Garrett, Administration, CSLB.
Ryan Hughes, Public.
Karen Hughes, Public.
Victor Parra, Labor Local 67, Northern California, asbestos, lead and mold labor.
Rich Markson, Pacific Avenue, Group of Lieutenant Rita, PhD student, access.
Daniel Cohen, television education.
Dave Flood, Enforcement. Lucy Jeffrey, Enforcement. Anna Rodriguez, Enforcement.
Steve Colby, Contractor. Ken Rosenberg, Adelaide, Coast Guard Weapon.
Larry Rolfus, California Landscape Contractors Association.
Greg Armstrong, National Electrical Contractors Association.
Julie Russell, National Electrical Contractors Association.
Thomas O'Hare, CSLB Public Affairs. Richard Shaw, Information Technology Division, CSLB.
Jeff Tony, Licensing Manager.
Nicole May, President, CSLB.
Derek Rock, Center for Public Law,
Brad Beatty with the California Professional Association of Specialty Contractors, CalPAS.
Board Washington Department of Consumer Affairs, Office of Chief Planning Solutions. Tom Ryan, Department of Consumer Affairs, South Training.
Juan Carlos Alvarez, Contractor State, National School.
Juan Gili, Association of Environmental Contractors.
Frank Redo, Association of Environmental Contractors. Rick Lucci, Classification Deputy Licensing.
Javier Rodriguez from the California nonprofit Save Our State.
Are there any other members of the public that would like to introduce themselves? Thank you. There's a section that we have every board meeting where the chair has a chance to make some remarks, and I'll make this brief. I just have a couple of things that I wanted to mention to the staff as we have you here as a group, and to the other board members to the extent it might be of any help as we go through the next year of what we're trying to accomplish in consumer protection as a board. This is where Don yells at me because I talk about my business. I own a steel company in Los Angeles area, and we have a couple hundred employees. And this company does residential steel construction and commercial steel construction. And I wanted to point out something that doesn't necessarily show up yet on labor rolls or in unemployment statistics or even in permits yet. And that is that about a year ago, there was a dramatic shift in our estimating and in the amount of work we were doing in prospective homes, large homes. What happens in our world is that the large homes are the first to recover from a down cycle. Then what comes next are the middle income housing, and then the low income housing, and then the commercial market, and I think that our other contractor members would vouch for the veracity of that cycle. And at this point, we started about a year ago with a lot more estimating, and now we're starting to get those projects. And we're getting them at a very fast and wicked pace, where it's going to be difficult for us to keep up with the workload on the high-end residential. In the past, every cycle is the same. They all go around it the same way. Maybe this one's going to be the first one that doesn't, but I doubt it. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is it's looking like the next 12 months, starting in June, for our business will be as busy as it was in 2007, 2008. That's a dramatic shift for my employment and for what's happening. Jim, I think maybe in permits in your area of the world, does it seem to be a change?
Well, I think you're right. What we're seeing is very large custom homes now coming in very fast.
And once that happens, it starts the cycle. It's a kickstart. It's a primer. So I think there's some planning between now and the strategic meeting, where, in particular, in licensing, Ed and Karen, also in enforcement, Ed and Dave, perhaps as well, that some significant planning is going to have to be done for what is going to happen once all these phone calls start coming in and these applications start showing up, and are we going to have the staff and crew, and how are we going to deal with it? So I don't think there's any answers to this right now, but it's a question of what can and what should we be doing as a board to be prepared. I think we're done with, at least in my world, in Southern California, we're starting to look toward a future that's much brighter than the past. So that was just on the side of what business looks like. As protocol, did Lisa want to say something? Sorry, Lisa, chime in, please.
I did. I would like to point out that on Valentine's Day, I had the privilege of attending the graduation of two of our newest peace officers, John Anderson and Bernard Lim. And David flew down, I guess, and was at the graduation. And I walked in, and the academy has a new director, a woman whose name escapes me. But she came up and introduced herself, and she said, "You are going to be so proud because your employees are superstars." And I thought, wow, cool, I get to take credit for something I didn't really do, but nothing wrong with that. Bernard Lim was the class president, and John Anderson was the class chaplain. Bernard was the overall winner, like the best in all categories on an average. And John's not 19, okay? He won in the overall physical fitness categories, overall. I mean, and you have to score in the 90th percentile and to get these. So there's 4 top people that are honored, and 2 of them were from Contractors State License Board. And it was pretty incredible. And on top of that, Bernard and John sang the Star Spangled Banner in front of everybody. So it was very, very cool, and I couldn't be more proud. And if you guys see them out and about, shake their hands. And their families gave up a lot for them to do this.
What offices are they from? Where are they located? Do we know?
Bernard is Covina.
Bernard Lim is West Covina.
West Covina.
and John Anderson as the San Bernardino Investigative Center.
It was especially fun since I swore them both in. So, thank you for that, letting me do it.
So it's your responsibility. You're the
Oh,
one who done it, right?
It was very cool, so.
Please, proceed.
Just a couple of things, piggybacking on both your comments. I received a copy of the California Department of Finance population projections, which I'll share with you, Steve, and the board if you want to share it with them. But it was a very interesting a report whereby it really talked about future growth of California and talking about, where we're going as a board, what we have to start thinking about. I thought the report, I got the executive summary, of course, but it was talking about where the population centers are going to be. And I was thinking about this in regards to some of our branch offices down the road. And it really zeroed in on some of the areas where there's going to be growth, particularly in Riverside County, for example. And I know that we always are looking at opportunities, and sometimes we have to make decisions on branch offices where we're going to be placing them. I think it would be a good thing just to look at that report, just to see where we might be going, where our maybe population bases are going to be, where our services are going to be needed, and where our resources are going to be needed too. So I will share that with you. In line with Lisa, I also had an opportunity to attend a graduation down in San Diego. Vicky Core was our candidate there to go through training. She was really, really happy to see us there to kind of acknowledge her great accomplishment, because this is a really intense training that they go through. And it was really, really a wonderful speech that the sheriff of San Diego gave, and he basically summed up his message to them by the initial CCI, which is basically courage, compassion, and integrity. And I thought that he shared that with the candidates there, and it really made send them a real good message of where they're going now that they are peace officers, not only contractors, but in their own police departments. So it was a really nice opportunity to do that, and Ms. Core is in the San Diego office, and it was nice to be there.
Thank you for that, Pastor. Are there any other comments from board members? Okay, two other items that I wanted to attend to. Number one is the committee chairs. I do it a little bit differently than prior chairs, where I would prefer that the committee chairs ask for their own motions, because they know the verbiage of what they're asking for better than I do. I will then take a vote, of course, after the motion is seconded. The other item to attend to, which is a little offbeat and going to come as a surprise to someone, is every now and then there's an employee at the CSLB that's selected and chosen for their exemplary service. And if we could, I'd like to ask Jane Kreidler from our Public Affairs Office to come up. CSLB's Senior Scam Stopper Program was established back in 1999. It's been the board's most important and most successful outreach program. About 2 years ago, the program got a shot in the arm when Jane came to the CSLB. Not only has she doubled the amount of Scam Stopper presentations, she's also expanded our outreach efforts to include a new Consumer Scam Stopper program, and done it with a great attitude. This morning, we'd like to recognize Jane for all of her hard work. Now, with that in mind, we have a certificate for Jane that I'll gladly read to everybody. In less than 2 years as CSLB's Public Affairs Outreach Coordinator, Jane Kreidler has more than doubled the number of statewide consumer protection presentations that have been made since inception of the Senior Scam Stopper program in 1999. In addition, Jane is the energy behind a new series of presentations known as the Consumer Scam Stopper program, which informs consumers of all ages. As a highly productive employee, Jane is always prompt, enthusiastic, and efficient, manages multiple handout materials, and updates the Public Affairs Outreach online calendar, and is a tireless worker who consistently displays grace and professionalism. The CSLB is proud to have Jane as a key representative of the board and acknowledges her many, many contributions to date. Thank you so much, Jane.
Thank
Without the glasses. It's always nice when we talk about the positive aspects of doing what we do for a living, so thank you, Jane, for that. Any other comments from board members? Okay, we'll proceed then. The public comment section. This item is provided for public comment pertaining to items on the agenda as well as items not on the agenda. However, the board cannot take any action on items not listed on the agenda. We welcome public comment on any item on the agenda, and it is the CSLB's intent to ask for public comment prior to the board taking action on any agenda items. But if for some reason we forget to ask for public comment on an agenda item, a member of the public desiring to comment on that item should just raise your hand, and you will be recognized. Also, we will be limiting public comment to 3 minutes per individual. I have a suspicion that we're going to have a few comments in the public based on your introductions about the asbestos program, but if it's repetitive, please forgive us for cutting you short or save us the discussion if we've already heard it from someone else. Are there any individuals that wish to address the board at this time? First hand up in the red shirt, and we'll just go back from the front. Is that okay? Please, miss.
There you go. My name is Karen Hughes. I'm super excited to be here today. My presentation is going to be probably about 2.5 to 3 minutes, and it's a little bit different than what I have done in the past for all of you. I am here today to thank the board and to also discuss a few aspects of change. Change for most individuals is a very difficult transition depending on the issues. For me, it's always been a chance for opportunity, whether the change is difficult or not so difficult. I am not here today to discuss details, a lot of which many of you may have a general knowledge, but over the prior 4 years, our lives have changed substantially in many ways. This all began with a fire that destroyed our home in June of 2008. Since then, we were in a disagreement with the contractor, and we were able to attend a CSLB arbitration to try to resolve the dispute. Unfortunately, many procedures were not followed by the CSLB and the AMCC, which is the board's arbitration program, and misinformation was provided to us. The result thus far is that we've paid a contractor for $50,000 for work that was not done and materials that don't exist in our home today. We could be potentially on the hook for up to $230,000 of attorney's fees to be decided in March in Superior Court next month. Yes, you can do the math. That's roughly $300,000 of debt that we may have to determine how we're going to come up with financially to pay for. The CSLB is already aware of all this information. We can only hope that maybe somehow a miracle is going to happen and that we win the lotto, or the CSLB might find a way to help us pay for this additional debt. But the important thing is the CSLB has recognized the loopholes that existed and has already made many changes, with many more in process. to tighten existing procedures and enact new procedures when necessary. For this, we sincerely thank the board and the CSLB for making these changes. I wanted to speak to you all today because what some of you may not know is how these changes by the CSLB have come about. This is where my presentation kind of goes to things that have already been said about superstars and also kudos. These changes from the CSLB have come about because of two staff members, Mr. David Vogt and also Missy Vickery. They both saw the opportunities and the need for change, and they believed in us, my husband and I, and with that they have spent a lot of time and effort in making procedural changes to the arbitration program within the CSLB itself, and as well as changes made by the current arbitration provider, which is the AMCC. This has not gone unnoticed, and words can't express our appreciation for the work that both of you have done and this agency. One of the most important changes and the most difficult, because it's not mere policy or procedure that you can handle internally, is that of legislative changes to the Business and Professions Code 7085.5, adding language to preclude any party from pursuing attorney fees after submitting to a CSLB arbitration. Again, because they believed in this recommendation, they have pushed forward to get these changes done, and I'm confident that this is going to happen in due time. It's already in process. It's being sponsored by Assemblyman Linder. It's Assembly Bill 993. We were just informed that there is some revised language changes that need to be submitted, and Mr. Vogt and Mr. Stans are working on this now. We hope that all the board members and your political connections will also support changes for the proposal. For those of you that don't know the details about the work that has been done by Mr. Vogt and Ms. Vickery, they should be recognized, commended, and congratulated for the work thus far and continuing. What they've done results to service in not only consumers, but also contractors and the high standards that this agency actually stands for. Without them, I honestly don't know if the changes could have been made. The CSLB is really, really lucky to have both these people working for them. Mr. Schifino, we had a phone conversation about a year ago, and I thank you for your time and advice. In that conversation, you understood, you wished me luck, but you've also kind of stated, I was barking up a tree where probably nothing would be done because of various reasons for change. I did understand your opinion, and I know the difficulty of change. However, when I hung up the phone, I sat in my chair and I said to myself, wow, things can change. I just need to figure out how to do this. You made my light switches just go like crazy. I proceeded to contact a state assemblyman in Senator Steinberg's office, and through those contacts, we had several meetings with the CSLB. The CSLB agreed that some legislative and procedural changes were in order, and we were sent a letter from Senator Steinberg regarding these changes. I'm almost done. Ms. Miller-Strunk, during the legislative committee meeting last fall, when we were discussing the arbitration program and suggested changes to BMP Code 7085.5, you stated you took the time to attend a CSLB arbitration hearing, and we're pleased with the program and how it worked and conducted. I thank you for taking the time to do this, and I agree, the program is a good one. Actually, I think it's a good idea for a CSLB representative to be in all arbitration hearings, as it might help to urge all parties in the arbitration, whether that be expert witnesses, consumers, contractors, and arbitrators, to be more honest. You are correct in that when procedures are followed, the system works. However, in our case, that didn't happen. Now, again, because of David and Missy's work and dedication and seeing the importance of the necessary changes, the CSLB arbitration program should be more effective. In contractor and consumer conflicts, it typically boils down to communication and the public being fully informed or misinformed about the aspects of what it means to contract with a contractor, and the public and the contractor's roles in various situations.
Excuse me, Ms. Hughes, could you please wrap it up?
Absolutely.
We're well beyond the 3 minutes.
Perfect, no problem. Just two or three more paragraphs. We've compiled some ideas that we think are going to help the consumers. We're going to provide that to the CSLB for consideration shortly to your website. In these economic times, anything that we can do to help each other make the process more clear and reduce conflict is only a benefit. We're in the information age, and everybody that can benefit to resolve conflicts and disputes out of court and reduce the CSLB's workload in the long run is good. Finally, David and Missy, I thank you again for your hard work, your time, and all the discussions we've had, your honesty and belief and recognition for the changes that you've made thus far and that are still in process. We're looking forward to seeing through the changes to B&P Code 7085. We contacted Congressman's office, various associations, our local city councils, and fully intend on supporting these changes to the end. At that time, it's going to be good cause for celebration because the legislation changes will be signed, endorsed, and completed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. I have a question from the board.
No, I have a question for Mrs. Hughes. Do you feel that the board owes you money?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, all right. I was a little confused by that because you said something about the board helping you with your legal fees.
Yes, if the board could figure out a way to help us pay the debt, that would be most wonderful.
All right.
More than happy to discuss that at some other closed session, but probably more appropriate.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Absolutely.
Are there any other comments from the public? Please, sir. And again, please try and limit the comments to 3 minutes if possible.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Brad Deedy. I'm the executive director for the California Professional Association of Specialty Contractors, known as CalPASC. And I just wanted to take a brief minute to actually recognize the enforcement efforts by the Contractor State License Board. Although there's always more that can be done, we'd like to support from our industry the efforts that have been made by the Contractor State License Board. There are still many builders, general contractors, awarding authorities, and homeowners who hire too many cheating contractors. And they continue to steal work from the legitimate contractors. But the CSLB has ongoing efforts to thwart that illegal activity. It was 3 years ago here today, or around 3 years ago here in this room, that the Contractor State License Board, Dave Fote, Steve Sands, and some others put out a challenge to the construction industry to help and do something about it. To that end, we developed a coalition that many of you are aware of, and I have a copy of that coalition letter that I'll leave with the Secretary. This is the third year running that we've had this coalition going with the letter to the governor. The coalition constitutes both signatory and non-signatory employer associations and labor unions. And we meet periodically around the state of California and invite agency chiefs to come and interact with the audience. The audience consists of construction company owners, labor union representatives, lobbyists from the construction community. And what we've seen happen more than once are relationships developed between state agency chiefs from various different agencies, including the Department of Industrial Relations, EDD, CDI, and now district attorney offices are starting to attend these meetings as well. We've held meetings at the Capitol. Just on February 8th was our last meeting. We've held them at the offices of the DA down in Orange County, City Hall in Palm Desert, Pasadena Convention Center, and we're going to do 6 meetings like that around the state again this year. And I'll wrap it up with that, just to say that had the Contractor State License Board, Dave Fote, Steve Sands, not brought the challenge to the table, asking for support and help from the construction community, we probably wouldn't have started this kind of a coalition. And we intend to keep it going, and especially with the comments that the chairman made about the upturn in the economy. We'll look forward to that. At the same time, we fear that there are still too many cheaters out there, and we appreciate your ongoing effort to thwart that activity. So thank you. If I may leave this with the Secretary.
Please do. Thank you for those comments. Any other members of the community? Sir, in the back there? Yeah.
Good morning. My name is Davi Rodriguez from Save Our State. I don't have a speech prepared. I got this kind of an impromptu because your notice ended up in my spam folder. I didn't get it until last minute. But I wanted to bring your attention to something here. Some years ago, 2004 or 5, I met a contractor that you issued a license to about 23 years ago. And all throughout that time, he has used that license as both a shield and a weapon to destroy lives and disrupt businesses, if not get them closed, destroy people's houses, and just in general spread misery. When I met this man, he had, at that time, 2005, over 50 lawsuits in this county alone in disputes with his customers. Now, he's just a small pissant contractor. He's not a big company. That's a hell of a lot. That was in 2005. I started tracking his work and tried to catch up with some of the people that he was in the midst of working on at the time, and I found this elderly couple. They were 85 years old, and he had done his usual work and tore their house apart, put walls back without plumbing and electrical lines that went nowhere, et cetera, and then abandoned the job after, extorting money out of them. They filed a complaint with this board, and this board did nothing. And it was not an isolated example. Like I said, those 50 lawsuits that I mentioned at the time, for every one of those, I found at least 3 people who had either been afraid to file a lawsuit or he had beaten them up so badly that they just couldn't do anything.
Excuse me, sir, one second. If I could help you with this.
Yeah.
Is there a specific request that you're asking the board to do?
I'm getting there.
Okay, because I can help you with it. Just get there and we'll get it.
Okay. Well, fast forward here to today. He's up to over 60 lawsuits at this point. And finally, the Attorney General's office is getting involved, and because I found another several jobs that he was working on and doing the same thing. Getting in there at the time is important because, it saves people. But the Attorney General said, well, I provided him all this information. In fact, we posted it on our website. And he said, well, I only see this complaint here for one named Ernst's and the one that they're working on now. And I said, that's absurd. So I came down here and I filed a public records request and asked for all those complaints. And guess what? There isn't any. He's right. Because they tell me that after 2 years, they purge all the complaints if the board takes no action. Now, those old people, they deserved action, but the board didn't do anything. So what we have here is the board covering its tracks. If you don't actually take action, how in the heck can you keep the records?
So let me help you cut to the chase. Dave Fote is in charge of our enforcement division. I'm going to ask Dave to circle back with me and just look into it, speak with Dave, and circle back and let me know what's happening. And that way we can get into the meat of the matter here at a board level. And I think that's what you're looking for, right?
I'm also looking for you to change an attitude here. This guy is a terrible person, and you've given him a license to steal. I don't know how many times he should have had his license taken away, but did not.
Well, we need you to come and
Can I interrupt for a second here?
I've been here.
I'd like to just comment. There's 5 of us here, including myself, that are building contractors, generals or subcontractors, and we have, just so that you know, we also have a personal grievance against these people that are hacking away at our system, hurting people like my 93-year-old mother and my 96-year-old mother-in-law. These are the people that we want. We're with you on this, and we appreciate the fact that you're here. And I think if you listen to Paul, he is also a contractor, and he's a good representative, and he's going to steer you in the direction of people that really do want to help. And it's not that we don't. Our role here is we are here to set policy as a board. That's what we do. And we, rely on our staff to carry out the basic day-to-day functions, and it's overwhelming. There's 310,000 licensed contractors in our state. We have the same agenda in mind. I just, I really feel like I needed to jump in there so you don't feel like, nobody cares. The same with Ms. Hughes. I mean, we care. So we appreciate your coming to before us. It takes a lot of courage to do that, and also represent somebody that's a senior or a couple.
And I don't think anybody up here is trying to cover their tracks.
I think the state is here. I won't go there. Okay, I could lay out, a lot of things. In fact, I would appreciate if you all come and visit our website, and I have all this guy's cases documented on there. Well, not all of them, but the majority of them. But the point is, we've got a prosecution arm and we've got this administrative arm here, and this guy has slipped through that net every time. And I even talked to the assistant DA that prosecuted him one time, and why they didn't, take his license then is way beyond me, because she had to call, the person had to call the police because he would not leave her house. He said, I have a contract. And he would not, she had to call the police and they had to drag his butt out of the house. That was back in 2004 or 5. Since then, it just continues. This guy is a very strange example, I admit that, but it shows you that even an egregious example like that doesn't get the attention it needs.
Well, let's get to that issue.
Okay, but let me just say this. One person in this county got fed up with his BS and took him to court. And when I met the guy, he had a table as big as yours, like that, with file boxes under there, all from the testimony and the court filings and stuff. Spent $200,000 chasing this guy around. Now he's just a general public guy who got $1,000 worth of work done in his house and turned it in to an absolute disaster. He got a judgment against this guy that included a permanent injunction that prevents him from violating the Section 17.2, and he put in there specifically, it's not limited to, it included false advertising, fraud, intentional misrepresentation, insurance fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, assault, battery, stalking, forgery, illegal payments, bribery.
Sir, please.
You get my point?
We got there.
He did the work that this board should have done.
I understand.
And still, he has a license.
And what you're doing, which is not a bad thing, it's a good thing, is you're bringing something to our attention that we get to look at. And whether it's misuse or other public comments where people come in and give us something that we didn't have before, it's a good thing. So at this point, heck, I didn't know this stuff was purged after 2 years. Maybe it shouldn't be. So there's things that we can look at based on your bringing it here. Now, I don't expect you to be able to sit in front of the board and lay out all the different things we could or couldn't do or might want to do or not do. That's what you're going to meet with our staff for. And they're going to talk to you, and you're going to give them information that they're going to research. They're going to put it in a format that we as a board can look at. But what I need you to do first is meet with staff. So we already have someone to meet with you now, outside. Scott is going to right now. So go meet with Scott, and he's going to put it all together for us, and we'll follow up with you. It will be done.
What area of your website is this located?
Well, there's a section. Save Our Safe maintains a website called publicdocumentdistributors.com, and we try to teach people how to use public records to protect themselves. I'm sorry. Push the microphone on it and not it turned on. There you go. Sorry. Anyway, we maintain a website called publicdocumentdistributors.com. I have a few cards you can have, and we try and teach people how to use public records to protect themselves. If you look in the court records, you can see this guy's got that many lawsuits. You might want to say, well, let's stay away from this guy. But you can go there, and we have uploaded many of his lawsuits on there in an attempt at that. But
you brought out something that we're pursuing at this time that involves cross-referencing violations and actions by other departments. And so it's very related to what you're bringing up. And so we're taking it very seriously. So yeah. Go meet with Scott, and maybe there's something we're missing that you're going to help us attack. So
almost all of the stuff that the prosecuting attorney has got right now came from us. It should have came from here.
Understood. Understood.
If you would like a copy of the permanent injunction, I could leave it here.
If you give it to Scott, he's going to be the one to manage it with you. Is that Scott back there? Right behind you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for tolerating me.
No, you're allowed. Much appreciated.
I would like to say one last thing.
Absolutely.
This is not just about money with this guy. He tears people's lives apart, destroys their businesses, and he does it for fun. It's not just the money.
Sir, I can tell from listening to you, it's not about money, it's about principle, and we appreciate that.
Very much.
That wasn't me. Let
us help you get to the bottom of the principle.
Right. Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? Sir.
Good morning, Board. My name is Leroy Adams. I'm a business manager of a construction company. I got trained by the CBs up to $10 million. Okay, let's talk about, in life we need to enforce better, not more. See, it's a privilege in this state to be a licensed contractor. It's not a right. Okay? Microsoft and other companies have certified trainers. Okay? They then certify people to go take a license and take a test. The CBs, as I was, by the way, Mr. Folk does an exceptional job. But there's only 100 people on his staff. One person can't do everything. Okay, people sometimes need to understand in the public that boards make policy and make decisions, but one person can't do it all. He could be an exceptional leader, but one person can't do everything. Okay, but the big issue comes in the training process. Okay. Doctors have continuing training. Lawyers have continuing training. Why can't contractors have continuing training, okay? And secondly, this guy brought up, my boss had a similar situation. I should have to give him $10,000 to take care of his house, so somebody cheats him that has a lot of lawsuits in the system that Mr. Floyd is working with along with Scott on the issues, okay? But the bottom line goes, if people, the state needs to look at people that have a lot of judgments against them, the people go to court, get some money out of the case, never pay their subcontractors, okay? Okay, we need to track this. The law says that all documentation, all his stuff should be on all legal documents. He should say in a lawsuit what he owes his subcontractors, okay? This should not be magic or science, okay? Everything should be documented and right, okay? And this is one thing the Contractors Board needs to look at enforcing. When people have judgments, pull those people in. Red flag them, because when people have a lot of judgments, that means they have a lot of problems, okay? So I ask you to look at the details on what you do. Not always, the life is in the details. It's about doing it, planning to do it right, and when you have a lot of problems in certain enforcement, then do lessons learned on that. Put to the legislature what you think we need to do to be in the laws.
Excuse me, sir.
This is not a hard process.
Excuse me, 1 second, sir.
Sure.
Back up here.
Yeah.
So what you're suggesting is that if there are civil judgments against, so a civil lawsuit, not a criminal action.
Civil lawsuits, yes.
That should be disclosed on the license.
Yeah, no, the license
website.
information, no, not just on the website, but if a contractor says, I owe my subs $8,000 and he owes them $50,000, that's a different story, right? It should be when he gets a judgment, when there's a lot of judgments, because what happened is, what the guy was saying is true. A lot of general contractors will get judgments against them. You know, it takes a long time for a lawsuit, 3 to 5 years. So by the time the money comes out, the other people that had the judgments against him forgot about it, and he just keeps the money to the general contractor.
There's certain challenges, just for what it's worth. There's certain, and it's a great point to bring up, just like the other gentleman just brought up. I don't discount that at all. Unfortunately, we do have a few. You attacked it right. You said we need to go to the legislature. There's certain rules of what we can and can't disclose, and we're bound by those rules. They're laws that we can't change.
Yeah, well, I'm working with the legislator on it.
You know we don't control the legislature.
I know, I understand. I'm
try.
talking to him about it. I'm talking about the committee for the business and the regulate your budget. I've been talking to the staff members over at the State House about changing some of the rules.
Which is a huge step forward, and I happen to, just candidly, I happen to agree with you in principle.
Yeah, because
I just don't know how to do it. But
I have all the bills in our office. We have 980 books, so I track all your lessons learned, all the stuff you said for the last 12, 15 years.
Not what I've said, I hope. Thank you so much. Are there any other comments from the public? All right, wonderful. The next meeting on the agenda, review and approval of the December 11th, 2012 board meeting minutes. Do any members of the board have any comments regarding the minutes? The board minutes are found in section D.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would move approval of the minutes from the December 11th meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So moved. The next item of the agenda is the Enforcement Committee report. Enforcement Chair Dave Diaz and Enforcement Chief Dave Fote will give us an Enforcement Committee report. Gentlemen.
Since our last meeting, the Enforcement Division has been working closely with the California Energy Commission to ensure proper enforcement of energy efficiency standards. Staff continues to meet with the representatives from the CEC on a regular basis, and I look forward to attending the next meeting this Thursday. David Fote, Chief of Enforcement, will now provide the enforcement update.
Thank you, Mr. Diaz. If we could turn to the first page under intake and mediation centers. Just want to highlight a couple of staff successes. The board goal was to settle 30% of complaints with restitution paid to injured parties. We hit just about 40% in 2012 with over $8 million paid to injured persons. So we're very pleased about that. And another program that's been very successful is highlighted with the first case that relates to the contractor using uninsured workers. And if you read that, you'll see that there's always a defense. In this case, the contractor was claiming he was being pushed to work faster than he could by himself, so he was almost forced by the homeowner to go out and hire workers for which he had no workers' comp. But this program has been very effective at low cost to the board in suspending the license and putting disclosure on the license record. Second highlight is it relates to a contractor that made some bad decisions and working in a medical facility, and how much that can cost somebody when they don't take the precaution to protect the surrounding area. He did forfeit the contract price and had to pay restitution to the owner of the property. But it's an example of what we do. And so if we have it, then we can take our administrative action.
Thank you. David, there was some numbers here of money that is returned, I guess, as far as the penalties. In one case, there's $23 million in tax assessments. Now, did Contractors State License Board recover any of the penalties that we can use for our own operations? Or how does that work?
Well, the numbers you're looking at those are dollars that are returned to the taxing agencies and to the general fund.
Okay.
Many of these contractors also received an administrative citation from CSLB. Okay. Now, we would retain those civil penalties for the action that we took. But that's not something we were highlighting here because it pales in comparison to the amount of taxes that aren't being withheld.
But there is revenue coming into for the board then from these stings or these types of operations.
Well, there is revenue coming in, but I don't know that we're showing a return on investment for the dollars that are spent. With the stings, depending on the county, many of the counties will provide some of our costs, but they're only providing costs $200 or $300. It's not a lot of money. I understand that the Northern California prosecutors are meeting on Friday. Unfortunately, I'll be able to attend that meeting, but they're going to present us a check for $5,000 for one of their cases. But the real focus on this, though, is to work with industry and trying to regulate the marketplace, not so much turn a return on investment with the Contractors Board, but with the taxing agencies to show that by working together, the state is benefiting. There is a return on investment when everybody's partnering effectively.
I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Rick Lopes and the public affairs staff for all their assistance in finalizing the new brochure, Caught for Illegal Contracting, What Happens Now. And this is the brochure. Dave will give us a little more background on why this brochure was created.
Well, we recognize that being arrested in a sting can be a life-changing moment, and we want the person that's violating the law to understand two things. One, if they don't have a license, they don't qualify for a license, they need to go into another line of work. But if they do qualify for a license, we want to give them some hope that if you're going to pay your taxes, you're going to operate lawfully, that you could make application and become licensed. And so we just became aware that some of those that are being issued a notice to appear are not always understanding what we're telling them at the sting itself. So again, I really want to thank Rick Lopes and his staff for putting this together so that somebody that's arrested in a sting can take this home, talk to their family about it, and make the right decision on how they should be conducting themselves in the future.
So when is this given to them?
It's given to them at the sting. So now, the sweeps as well. Thank you.
Agenda item E2. Chief vote will discuss proposed improvements to the CSLB's disclosure of actions taken by partner agencies.
Thank you. This has been quite a group effort, and just to give you a little background, the way we've been operating, if a contractor typically engaged in public works has violated labor code or a tax law, we would take our own administrative action to provide disclosure on the CSLB website. We put together a task force, though, to look into this, and it consisted of representatives from the Attorney General's office and Don Chang is one of our consultants, to determine if there was a way that we could disclose an allied state agency or local government's action on the CSLB website without the need to take our own. Now, we've looked at citations, and the cost for a citation on average is about $5,000, so we have to be conscious of that. Steve Sands and I, though, had the opportunity a few weeks ago to meet with the Association of State Capital Outlay Managers. It was a fascinating meeting. These are managers that are representing the university, the college system, Department of General Services, corrections, and others. And one thing that's common for all of them is they have bad contractors that are taking advantage of them. They're having a difficult time getting the jobs finished. They aren't a responsible contractor, and yet because they don't share information, they're all using the same contractor and meeting once in a while to complain about that contractor. Subsequent to that meeting, I was able to bring together in LA and Los Angeles a number of awarding agencies that included, it's in the packet here, local school districts, they had DA representatives, just a lot of airport authorities, an example, a lot of local government that are using contractors, and the same thing was true. They're using the same problem contractors, having the same problem. The jobs are getting bid up significantly by lack of change orders. They're not paying prevailing wages. There's all kinds of issues that are going on, and yet they're not able to get the information in one database. So these groups who are identified in the board packet have all agreed to partner with the CSLB. And by partnering with the CSLB, that means that they're going to make us aware when they've taken an action, they've made an assessment against a contractor for violating the public contract code, for violating prevailing wage laws. They have an assessment that's public record. They'll make us aware of it. And when they do, you'll see on, this actually would be following page 2, what we're proposing here is that we would include that highlighted section where it says license status. This may not necessarily be where it would go. We had to cut and paste to put this on the document. But our proposal is that a member of the public that's looking to hire a contractor would go to the CSLB website and see potential labor code violation determined by the Labor Commissioner. Public information. You click on the link, it's a blue link at the bottom, and that takes you to the next page. And to eliminate adding additional paperwork in the board packet, I didn't include what would happen if you clicked on one of these links. What you would get is civil wage and penalty assessment, which is a public record. You could print this right out. It will tell you what was assessed against this contractor. So that looks, it seems to us that would be very efficient for low cost. And the final page in this packet is something that the group in LA provided to me. They provided contractors where they have taken action, public information, and yet they're not sharing it with each other. And because we don't have this in place where we're providing the link on the website, they don't know about the problems their other state other awarding agencies have had with these contractors. So I don't know if there are any questions about that.
Yeah, don't bother putting it in the middle of the page. Put it up top where everybody can see it.
Dave, I have one question. These type of violations, once these contractors are convicted of these things, wouldn't these preclude them from bidding more public works for a period of time?
Well, but see, the problem is the information is not shared. And so you could have a huge assessment from Caltrans, and Department of General Services doesn't know about it. So it could very well, if they do pre-qualification of bidders, having a labor code violation or having a serious public contract code violation would preclude you from bidding other work, but only if that other awarding agency is aware of it. And that's what this will solve. We're not suggesting there's going to be hundreds of them, but we know there's probably more than 50 right now that we could link on the website.
So this organization will act as a hub for information that they are going to get from other agencies and those administering public works contracts.
what Steve and I did is we challenged them, assuming that the board will approve this, to give us their top 20 offenders. That's what we're looking at. So what they have to do is provide us the name and the documentation to support the action they've taken. And so what we're asking them to do is to forward that information to us. We'll then link it on the website, and hopefully this will serve as a model where we can expand it. Did that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Now, are we going to address just potential or actual? In other words, if there's a potential, I mean, if there's a complaint or an alleged or a maybe, it's not disclosed.
No, they would have to provide to the CSLB a public document where it's public record that there was an assessment like I have here, where it names the contractors that were assessed literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we would have this in our records. We would open a complaint, keep this in our record, and you'll see there's a disclaimer on the website and also in the motion that would encourage the person to verify the status of that allegation with the other awarding agency. But again, we would not disclose anything that's not already publicly disclosed by another government agency.
I think it's great.
Mr. Chair, David, now, is this limited only to contractors doing business with public agencies at this point in time?
No, they're the ones that we first are seeking to work with, but this would relate to any contractor, especially one that's been assessed a penalty by Department of Industrial Relations. And that could very well be someone that only does the residential work.
So therefore, if XYZ consumer has a project, the Department of Industrial Relations cites them, then that would also be, you could also include that information on that person's license?
Absolutely. If this is successful, what I would envision is when a partnering state agency has taken action against a licensee for not having workers' compensation insurance, as an example, or misclassification of workers, all of that you could link on the CSLB website without us having to take the formal administrative action.
You know, maybe long-term, this would be something that you might also want to consider for unlicensed folks, you know, because that's probably not on your website right now, right? I mean, unlicensed.
No, the challenge with the unlicensed is the ability to identify them, and so that we wouldn't compromise a licensee with the same name. And that's something that we're always looking at, an opportunity to do that.
Okay, I'm going to state a motion, and hopefully somebody will move it.
Good luck how you're going to word this one.
Well,
Well, you've got certain language.
Exactly.
There you go.
All right. As part of the strategic plan, the board is being asked to approve disclosure of a partnering agency's administrative action by electronic leak on CSLB's website. Disclosure of the administrative action will only be made upon verification of the information and with the advisory statement to verify the status of the allegation with the partnering agency.
So moved. Do we have a second? All right. Those in favor?
Mr. President, you
Yes.
may want to ask for public comment first.
Public comment. It's not on my list. Public comment, please. All right. All right. No discussion? Then we'll go to a vote. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? So moved. Thank you, Dave and Dave. The next item on the agenda is the Public Affairs Committee report. Public Affairs Committee Chair Pastor Herrera and Chief Rick Lopes will give us the Public Affairs Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. I will just touch upon very briefly 4 points here. First, the good news is that it's good to know that the Division of Public Affairs is fully staffed. There are no vacancies at this time, and we hope it continues that way, right? One of the sad news items is that, as Mr. Lopes has shared with me, is one of the former Contractor State License Board's employees, Sarah Martin, unfortunately has been hospitalized. I don't know if some of you do remember her. She was a student assistant here in the Public Affairs unit for over 2 years. Unfortunately, she's had some health situations which are quite serious. They found some blood clots in her lungs, and which has really had some consequences for her. Just as background, she graduated last summer from Sacramento State University and was just hired full-time as a communications specialist at the California Alliance for Jobs. What she did here at the Contractors State License Board, she was really a whiz with the social media. She actually developed some policies and procedures here for the department in dealing with social media. She also trained our public affairs staff with how to code pages for the board's website, and also how to use and be knowledgeable about social media so that we could be more adept to reaching out to the public. She was a really bright young lady full of energy, and on behalf of the public affairs staff, we ask that you keep Sarah and her family in your thoughts and your prayers. It's a difficult time for them, and we wish her the best, and hopefully things will turn around. Also, we again want to congratulate Jane Kreider for her recognition today for her excellent work in handling our senior scam stoppers and the consumer scam stoppers. Thank you very much, Jane, and continue that partnership with the other agencies and doing outreach for the Contractor State License Board. We really appreciate that. One last thing, I just want to, as I have some props here for you. This is a heavy prop. The division just revised the 2013 Contractors License Board, the reference book. It's over 1,000 pages, so please take a look at it at any time, and it is available. Is this online also?
It's online, and it's also available for purchase.
Okay, you can purchase that. I'm not going to get into the price because I'm not a salesman here today. Also, in the back, you'll find a copy of the accomplishments and activities. We were, as a board, sent a copy online, and I guess, Steve, this will be required reading for our strategic planning session?
Yes,
absolutely. Yes, okay. So it is available. This is another product that the Public Affairs unit completed, and it's a very, very interesting document, and we ask you to look at that. And there were some other documents that were mentioned today. This is for the unlicensed contractor, and we think that's a very, very good one. Now I'd like to have Mr. Lopes just give you a more detailed activity of the unit, and also to give us an update on the strategic plan objectives that you've been working on. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you. If you go to page 1 in the Public Affairs Update, actually the first 2 items there are items that Sarah, when she was here, did have a big part in it. And I wanted to bring your attention that on page 2, what we're going to start doing in future reports is, now that this video that actually Sarah produced as her senior project when she was at Sac State, this is to assist our applicants in correctly completing their application. We found that there's a high rejection rate, and if you look at the graph on page 2, we're now going to be tracking the overall rejection rate is the blue line you see going across, and up at the launch of the video is the vertical line there in the middle of the page. You see before, and what we're going to do, and hopefully in the months to come, you're going to be seeing that number drop as hopefully people are taking a look at this video to assist them in their application, and thereby making fewer mistakes and having higher acceptance rates on those applications. So we're going to be reporting on that in future board meetings as well. Going on through the rest of page 2 and 3, you see some of the statistics for not only our social media but our email alerts, and those continue to grow. Now that we are fully staffed, one of our new staff members, Tom O'Hare, is paying a lot of attention to our social media and help us expand the things that we're doing with our social media. On page 4, you see some of our media relations highlights. This was only press releases through the end of the month. We have added some additional ones this month as well, and we're continuing to do a lot, and we will have some expanded ideas and some more plans coming up in the next couple of months as far as media outreach. At the bottom of page 4, we'll just note that we have put the winter edition of our licensee newsletter. The California Licensed Contractor is online. We're currently in the process of producing the spring edition, and we do have a plan to have a printed edition out before the end of the fiscal year. As board members will remember, we have cut back on the number of times we do print our newsletter because it costs upwards of $250,000 every time we produce one, just in the printing and mailing costs. But we do want to be sure and get at least one edition out a year into the hands of our contractors, because our email alerts, we're not reaching everybody, and we don't think that's really a good idea not to try to get to them at least once a year to let them know about new laws and the like. So we will have a printed edition before the end of the year. And going on to page 5, the publication highlights, as Pastor mentioned, and Dave mentioned as well, the Sting and Sweep brochure. Actually, it shows here it's being at the Office of State Publishing. It was just delivered last week, so that is now completed. And you see some of the other things that were mentioned as well. You see some of our other publications that we do have in the process, including a couple of Spanish language translations. And you see at the bottom there's a list of things that are currently under development. On page 6 is the current list of scam stopper seminars that Jane has conducted. And this is a tentative list of things that are planned in the future, and actually it's already outdated. Jane's been busily at work, and we've actually added a number more of senior scam stoppers that we have planned over the next couple of months. And what we'll be doing is we'll be getting that information out to the board members, and we encourage board members to join us for any of those that they'd like to either to watch or to participate in. And Jane can coordinate that for you. We also do have the ongoing schedule and a calendar posted on our homepage. So if anybody can go to the homepage, click on the Senior Scam Stopper graphic, and it will take you to the calendar, additional information on all of our events. And as we mentioned earlier, Jane is now gearing up the Consumer Scam Stopper program. This is an expansion of a similar type of consumer protection information that goes beyond just consumers who are seniors. And you're seeing we're kind of starting our focus here in the Sacramento area as we kind of get this off the ground to keep our travel costs down. And so we're going to be expanding that as we gear up. As far as our Speakers Bureau, I wanted to note for board members that Jane, along with Melanie Bedwell, this month has conducted 2 training sessions, one here in Sacramento and last week in Norwalk, where we've been able to work with our enforcement and licensing staff to identify people who are ready, willing, and able to go out and actually assist us when we have requests for speakers to go out and speak to various groups. So we had, I think, probably total somewhere like 50 different employees, somewhere in that neighborhood, who went through the training. And so we're going to be able to hopefully be able to utilize them in the months ahead to do some of our speeches for us, which again will help us keep down our travel costs. As far as the contractor outreach program, this is one of our strategic plan items for the year. I won't go into too much depth. I can answer questions, but as we're developing the program, right now we are in the process of putting together our different campaign elements and the different printed materials. We're developing those products now, and you can see on page 8 the timeline as we're trying to move this forward. The next things that we're going to be seeing is we develop some prototypes for logos and some of the materials, and so we'll be sharing that with the board and with the Public Affairs Committee as that information continues to be developed. And unless there's any questions, that concludes the Public Affairs Program update.
Yeah, just a question. Do you plan to have this in Spanish?
Yes, we will have that translated at some point.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Dave, do you find that a lot of in the sweeps, people that you actually arrest or cite, they're limited English speaking?
We do find that. It's kind of a mix of different dialogues, but yes.
It'd probably be worth getting this translated.
I think it would, yes.
Are there any other board comments or public comments? One thing I wanted to mention, Rick, is an employee came to me and said when they had all the new notice of mechanics liens and some changes to the forms, came to me and said how wonderful the website was for downloading those forms. So I think the contractors love that stuff because it gets rid of our liability because we're doing what the CSLB told us to do.
Well, it's good, and we're trying to put a lot of stuff, especially the new stuff. We do have a section on our homepage that says what's new, and we've had the mechanics liens linked right there. And we're hearing back, and we're doing a lot more with the social media, and a lot of licensees are now, following us and liking us on our Facebook, and we're actually having some dialogue back and forth, and they're kind of helping us fine-tune some things and really raising some issues, which is appreciated.
You guys are doing a wonderful job.
I just have a follow-up about the forms again, because I've said it publicly, but they're bookmarked on our computers at work, and you can fill them in and just print them so they come out looking nice and neat and clean. And you would be shocked to know if I request release forms from my subs or something, 9 out of 10 come back on the wrong form. And one guy said, "Oh, I don't want to have to pay to get new forms. I had a service for this a couple of years ago." I said, "It's free on the Contractors State License Board website."
And then they say, "Oh, we have a website." That's a tough one. It's really hard. All right. Any other comments before we move on to the next item on the agenda? The next item is the Legislative Committee report. Legislative Committee Chair Lisa Miller-Strunk will provide this report with the help of Steve Sands, I believe.
Well, yes, I'm kind of stuck with Steve since my staff is, they're either not back yet or they've left us. Mike Brown has left the building. I'm going to go through these a little bit out of order. I would like to do, you're looking at, if you're in your packet, the status of legislative proposals page, there's B, C, and E. You have copies of all those bills in your packet. B relates to Senate Bill 263. C relates to Senate Bill 262. And E relates to Senate Bill 261. I'm going to butcher this guy's name, so I apologize ahead of time. All three of those bills are being carried by Senator Monning, and their principal co-author in the Assembly is member Acadian. Is that how you say it? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think we're really lucky to get this team on these bills. We have bipartisan support. So on this, they both are from the San Luis Obispo County area and really see the need for these. 263 has to do with the duly licensed, the definition of what makes a licensed contractor. I'm not going to go through them specifically. You can all read them. 262 is the license qualifier issue in terms of what constitutes a qualifier in terms of the supervision. We've talked about this issue a lot in terms of people renting out their licenses, and kind of cleans up a lot of that. And 261, it's the aiding and abetting issue that we've been working on. I really, really want to thank Mike Brown for all of his hard work on getting these moving forward, especially the duly licensed issue. D in your packet relates to Assemblyman Linder's bill, 993, and Ms. Hughes provided us with some details on that, so we've got a sponsor for that bill. There's two others in here, A and F, the illegal use of license information, the delinquency renewal fee, and correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but those are procedurally different and not in yet.
Correct. Yeah, the A and F are in committee bills, and they're not required to meet the same legislative deadlines as other bills. The committee bill is submitted by the Senate Business and Professions Committee. It's meant for non-controversial technical cleanup type bills, and that should be coming out probably next month or so.
As you can see, we have a fairly ambitious legislative program ahead of us, and I really, really want to thank our partners in the industry who worked so hard to get this moved forward and help us find good sponsors. And here we go. Thanks.
Are there any questions or comments or discussion on the legislative committee report?
Can I add something?
Please, Steve.
The arbitration bill, some provisions were left out in Ledge Council, so we'll be amending that bill. The 7031 bill, it's probably had 100 different amendments to it in the last month. I don't know what shape the final bill will be in, but that's probably going to take the most work. Mike Brown is in the Bahamas on a cruise with his wife and family. He promised me he'd be watching this on his webcast in his room on the. So he asked me to explain to you how you build a watch. No. No, we did present Mike with a gift on leaving. We got him a big giant stuffed Eeyore doll from Winnie the Pooh. Those of you who know Eeyore will appreciate that. Mike loved it. He said he's going to keep it on his desk. And Laura Zuniga will be back March 4th. And Laura and her son Eli are doing great. And we're looking forward to having Laura back. One other thing that will happen during this legislative session is that there will be bills that we'll have to follow. Over the years, we've seen more pieces of legislation that involve the Contractors Board that aren't screened by the board first. They just show up in bill form. And we usually have problems with those pieces of legislation because they haven't been vetted by the board. A lot of times they're trying to get the board to enforce other state agencies' missions or private industry or something that really isn't maybe in the core mission of the Contractors Board, which is to protect consumers. So that will, and with term limits and new legislators and new staffers over there, it'll be a lot more challenging to screen these bills and keep track and work with them. So that will be taking a lot of time probably for the staff this year. I will keep the board informed on what's going on with those pieces of legislation.
Any further comments or discussion on legislation? All right, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the Licensing Committee report. Licensing Committee Chair Ed Lang and Licensing Chief Karen Robinson will give us the Licensing Committee report.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you look in your packet under H1, Licensing Committee report, Chief of Licensing Karen Robinson will now provide the licensing update.
Of course, this is the section we all look forward to at every board meeting. We get workload stats. So if you turn to page 1, you'll find the license application workload charts. The first chart depicts the average number of applications received per month. Keep going down. 2012, 2013, I know looks a lot lower right now, but keep in mind that we haven't hit our peak months yet. March, April, May are typically the peak months, so hopefully they'll go up a little bit. The stats below that show a comparison of the applications received per quarter, and I'm kind of encouraged that we may have hit rock bottom, and as Chair Shafina pointed out at the beginning this morning, it looks like things may be coming up. Obviously, the numbers are still down a little, but I think we've leveled out now, so we're hoping that what we're going to see very soon here will be an upward trend. On page 2, a couple more charts, the total number of applications received per month by fiscal year, and then the number of applications received, and it's broken out by the type of application, whether it's an exam, waiver, add class, or replacing the qualifier. So again, numbers aren't real high yet, but we're kind of encouraged, and we're going to hope that they start going up. Page 3 and 4, you'll find the information about limited liability companies. We now have a year under our belt issuing licenses to limited liability companies. On the bottom of page 3 are just the stats, the total numbers received, broken out by whether they're an exam app or a waiver app. In the first year since we began the program, we received 667 applications. and we issued 182 licenses to limited liability companies. Continue to struggle with making sure the companies, when they come to us, that they've completed all their paperwork at Secretary of State. So we're still experiencing a pretty high reject rate, but hopefully over time, people will get that system down and we'll see fewer of those. Our workers' comp recertification program we implemented in January. This was the program that took effect as a bill that the board sponsored about 2 years ago. This requires recertification for all of those that currently have a workers' comp exemption on file. The first round of renewal notices that went out in January, meaning they'll renew the end of March, have the new recertification requirement on it. So by the next board meeting, we should have some statistics for you to see just how many people complied with it, how many rejects and whatnot. Right now, we just don't have too many numbers because, again, those just went out about a month ago. Page 6 is the disposition of applications report, just showing where applications are in the process, and there are a variety of reasons why they're either issued, void, or pending, and this, we just keep track of where these apps are in the process. You've got your application processing route just for informational purposes. And then page 7 and 8 is our criminal background statistics. You've got the totals, over 271,000 records received from the Department of Justice since we implemented the program. Nearly 48,000 have a criminal history associated with it. Our licensing information center, we've got a lot of information in here as well as some workload statistics. Our abandoned calls went up slightly in October to December of 2012 as compared to 2011. Our incoming call volume also went up during that same time period. We are currently working on a project to really review the workload, the staffing resources, and the reasons, to determine the reasons why call wait times and volumes seem to fluctuate so much. So I, along with our chief of admin and some administrative staff and our IT staff, are pulling reports, looking at the information, and working towards determining how we get maybe a little less volatility in the licensing information center. The good news is the information center is almost fully staffed, and in fact, if we get it fully staffed, I think it will be the first time since I started with the board in 2004 that we have all the positions filled. So we're very close. Of course, you can see the stats on page 10. Our average call wait time, the calls received, all of that. The judgment unit is responsible, and David kind of touched on this in his report too, for recording and assisting in collecting outstanding liabilities that are reported to us by EDD, Department of Industrial Relations, Franchise Tax Board, as well as unsatisfied judgments that come from contractors, consumers, and attorneys, and the payment of claims that are reported to us by the bonding company. When we receive this information, we notify the licensee that you have this outstanding, whatever, judgment, liability, or bond payment. They're given a certain amount of time to comply with whatever the outstanding liability is. If they don't, they're suspended. So you've got a couple of charts here that show our initial letter sent out, how many were suspended, after suspension, if they made it right, how many were reinstated, and then, of course, the total cost savings to the public are listed by liabilities, judgments, bond payment of claims, and then the final chart shows the total savings to the public, which, as you can see, is a significant amount of money.
Karen, if I could ask you a question real quick. So does this come from enforcement, or is it coming directly to licensing?
These notifications come to licensing, We will get, for example, a consumer will send us a copy of the judgment that they got against a contractor. My staff will put that on record. A letter will go out saying, we were notified of this judgment. You have 60 days to make good on this or your license will be suspended. If they satisfy that judgment, then we go ahead and take it off the record. If they do not, we suspend the license. Now, of course, the money goes to either whoever, the consumer or other contractor who holds the judgment, or to EDD or DIR. But all of the, in this particular program, all of the notifications and letters go out from the licensing division. And then finally, you've got your charts on pages 15, 16, 17 that show the number of weeks for processing in the licensing division. This just shows how many weeks it takes to pull a particular document to be processed. And that's it for the licensing part of the update, unless there's any questions.
I have a quick question. On the number of applications received and our renewals, is there any way that we track the location of that person by county? Have we ever done that? That person or entity to find out where all the work is? So all of us out of work can go.
We've not done that, but it might be something, a report we could pull. I mean, well, we do have them list their city on their application, and that information is recorded. It could be.
When we sign our applications, I believe at the bottom it says county of, doesn't it? I mean, is there any way that we could ever?
It did, but we were thinking about removing county and just leaving city in, to tell you the truth.
482 of those.
Just because it seemed kind of antiquated, but now that you bring that up.
58 counties.
But it's probably something that we could run a program. I mean, we know what counties the various cities are in. And we do have the city information on our license files. So although I'm going to be hesitant to say we would submit a programming request to IT right now because they seem to be very overwhelmed with what they've got going on. But
yeah, I just bring it up in terms
to see where the work is coming.
The work and the focus of, the violations and that sort of thing by contractors, where we're getting those reports. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions.
We have a couple questions. Go ahead.
On the probationary license, when a licensee is issued that, I know it's for a non-violent offense. Does time just heal that, or does the licensee have to do something to get off probation?
Well, typically, a probationary license is just issued for a certain period of time, and they just have to behave themselves for the most part. I mean, there can be probationary licenses in some instances where they have to do something specific, but for the criminal background, is that what you're talking about? Yeah, typically that is just, for the next 3 years, you have a probationary license. You need to mind your P's and Q's and not get in any more trouble.
Karen, just two questions. One, remember the email scam that they were hitting a lot of has that been taken care of? I mean, is it kind of squashed a bit now?
You mean the,
where they were
towards our applicants?
Yeah.
Wait, it's an open
Yeah.
thing right now, and we're on it. I just want to leave it at that for right now.
So that's still going on there, huh? No, that's too bad. Just a question on page 3 of the limited liability companies. I see that, 50% are waived, they're waived status. Should that be a concern to the contractor in any way? I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, Pastor, I didn't hear 50% or what?
Are under the waiver category more than.
That should not be a concern. A waiver application typically means the person already holds that class, and so they don't have to re-exam. These are not waivers in the sense that they're getting through without ever taking an exam. So, no, that shouldn't be of a concern to anybody.
Any other questions?
If not, would you follow us through the agenda item H2, Testing Division? Heidi Lenses-Heel will now come up and give us a report update.
Morning. Testing Division update is right after licensing in your packet. Testing Division consists of examination administration and examination development. And we have our numbers here for number of examinations scheduled for the last 12 months. And of course, the examinations follow the application, so they're hovering around 3,000 a month. But remember, everyone takes 2 examinations, so for every 1 application, that's 2 examinations, and they sometimes test multiple times. So our numbers aren't exactly consistent with applications. And so with Karen, we're hoping for an uptick in examinations. Our examination staffing situation is doing well. We were able to finally hire a manager for that division after a long wait. So this has been a big relief for me to have a supervisor of that division. And we have 1 test monitor vacancy in San Jose that we are working on filling. And we also have an analyst position that will work with administration and development that was created by the person who became the supervisor. So we're working on that too. With regard to our testing centers, on page 2, you can see how many examinations are scheduled by each testing center. And Joan, maybe that answers some of your question about where people are getting their license, because a lot of people are in Southern California, of course. You see that Norwalk is our largest examination test center. What else? We are still working with Department of General Services to relocate our Oakland testing center to a new office in Berkeley. The plans have been approved, so that project's going to go ahead very quickly, we're told, because they want us out of the Oakland building as soon as possible. Examination wait time is not an issue right now, as we have plenty of room in our test centers, so there's no wait for people who want to walk in. We're also using our test centers for other projects. We had DCA conduct some training for other boards for the Breeze software. They used two of our test centers twice a week for training for 3 weeks in January and February, and everything went smoothly after some communication and technical issues were ironed out. And we will probably use them again for Breeze if DCA needs that. We're also administering the CSLB's Enforcement Representative 1 examination in our test centers, and that's been working very well. The Examination Development Unit is business as usual as far as developing new examinations. We also have we're down 1 test specialist, but our test specialists that we do have are very experienced, so they're able to cover for the one that we are down. We're working to hire a new person, which is it's difficult to find people who have this expertise. Since the last board meeting, we developed new exams for C42 sanitation systems, C47 manufactured housing. In progress on page 4, we have occupational analyses in progress for C5 carpentry, C28 lock and security equipment, C38 refrigeration, C60 welding. We have new exams in progress, C34 pipeline, C45 signs, C46 solar, C50 reinforcing steel, C55 water conditioning, C57 well drilling, and hazardous certification. We're using email surveys as much as we can to cut costs and reduce the time it takes to get data back. We're still sending out paper because, as Rick has mentioned, it's just not all contractors are, we don't have email addresses for all contractors, but that should improve soon. We did get one of our strategic plan items finished, in that we're getting a space for email address on the renewal application. So hopefully we'll get additional email addresses from contractors, so we'll be able to increase the number of email surveys that we're doing in the future, and eventually maybe do away with the paper if we get a large enough response. And finally, consumer satisfaction survey. We're we have the last surveys out from December, and so the next board meeting will have a report for 2012, so we can see how that data is going. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Heidi? Okay, thank you, Heidi. In your packet, let's go to agenda item H3, consideration of asbestos abatement specialty classification. At the December board meeting, the board adopted legal counsel's opinion on asbestos certification, defining that asbestos certification is specific to the trade in which the individual is licensed. Since that meeting, though, staff has met with members of the industry involved in asbestos abatement who are requesting the establishment of a specialty license for asbestos abatement. You have in your packet a background paper submitted by the Association of Environmental Contractors, and Mr. Mike Eli is here today to address the board on that issue. Mr. Eli?
Thank you. We're just trying to get a trade classification that fits what we do. I've been a licensed contractor for over 25 years, or over 23 years, 25 years in the industry. I hold an A license, a B license, a couple of C licenses, an asbestos certification, and a hazmat certification. None of them fit what we do. What we really do as a contractor is make it safe for other contractor or other trades to build something. We're there when renovation. We only deal with above ground structures, and what we do is contain the areas and remove materials that are considered hazards. There are a lot more hazards than, if you think about asbestos, it's just one hazardous material that was put into different building products, but it was in the sheetrock, it's in the spray acoustic, it's in the glues, it's in all sorts of different things, just like lead and some other materials. So what we deal with is there's about roughly about in our association 17 different contractors. We're all licensed with, many of them have B licenses. We don't build anything. Many of them have C license, installation license. We don't insulate. We have a multitude of licenses, but none of them actually, we have, a lot of us have C21 licenses, which is building demolition. We just want to get a trade that actually fits what we do. We've been providing a service to the construction industry for a long time. It's a valuable service. We protect, we work in hospitals during infectious control, because whenever you do construction work in a hospital, you elevate the level of aspergillus spores. Those aspergillus spores in immune-compromised patients are fatal, and there's no cure for it. There's a lot of things that we do with that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. One of them is asbestos, and we want to take the step to actually have a trade be represented. We're kind of the invisible trade. What we do is we're the invisible trade, and it's kind of appropriate. We basically clean up invisible stuff. The asbestos fibers, you can't see them when they're in the air, similar to lead. But when in construction nowadays, when you look at everything's focused on building, that's great. Building from new, and the manufacturers, they have all their environmental regulations when they manufacture the materials, and then they turn them over to the contractors to actually be installed. But then when you go to renovate the areas, you create other hazards. You create airborne hazards. You create hazards of materials going into the aquifer and the water. And so that's what we deal with. And so the first step is to address one area, which is the asbestos that we deal with. And we'd like the board to consider, some of the other hazards as well. But right now, as a contractor, I have maybe a couple hundred people, 3 different offices, and 40% of the work I do is asbestos. But we work in almost hospitals. We work in all sorts of environmental situations. It's all related to the construction industry. So it's kind of I guess, the invisible trade. So I'll answer any questions anybody has.
I have a couple.
Sure.
I'll try to make them quick, and maybe David, do we have, the way the law is right now, people are fined for doing asbestos removal if they're not certified, I'm assuming. I mean, do we have a way of tracking that?
Yeah, it usually occurs, though, because of an air quality management district has made the finding.
Is there any other agency, or does it happen when you get somebody performing the work that really has no business performing that work?
Well, we work very closely with the Division of Occupational Safety and Health,
yeah,
too.
okay.
So there's overlapping jurisdiction. It's just that we haven't been out front in investigating these type of complaints. We wait for somebody else to do the investigation, make the finding, and then it's referred over to the CSLB.
Okay. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Right now, you have a license enhancement to do asbestos work, or this, okay. Are you proposing that this classification take the place of that? I mean, the people that are currently licensed now would have to now come under this classification? Or are they going to be grandfathered in, or what is part of that proposal? Well, if they currently have a license with the certification, then they can do this abatement.
No, the license, the certification is a supplemental, as we understand it from the board. This is something we didn't understand. It doesn't allow us to do asbestos. For example, if I want to do a roof and it has asbestos, and I want to demolish that roof, unless I have a roofing license, I can't demolish that roof even though it has asbestos in it. The asbestos certification, and help me out here with ties to my license. So the problem that we have is I deal with asbestos materials in roofing, in ceiling materials, in walls, in floors, in ceramic floors, and not that's lead, but in the glues that hold the floors, I deal with it in insulating materials. So it requires me to have all these licenses of all these different contracting licenses, and yet I never install any of those materials. So it's awkward. So if for example, if you create a trade as asbestos, and then I could get away with having maybe a B license when it's 2 or more trades, and I don't have to have 15 different licenses. Because right now I, like the other 17 contractors, like the 50 contractors that are active in doing this work in the state, we're constantly, because of the way the interpretation of the license law is, we're constantly not properly licensed, is basically what it amounts to.
Okay, then that begs the question, if under this license, would you be doing plumbing work, mechanical work, and electrical work as in the areas that were contaminated? For example, if this room was contaminated, but there were existing utilities that had to go through it, that had to maintain another area, how would you handle that?
The way we've been handling it for the last 25 years, we make it safe for other contractors to come in there. We do only the demolition portion of it and the containment, and then make it a safe area for other contractors to come in afterwards.
Well, my point would be, and not to interrupt you, but there are some circumstances where the utilities cannot be taken out, basically demoed, until new utilities are put in the place. Let's say they're contaminated, they have to be removed, but other utilities have to be put in to maintain another area that's adjacent. How would you handle that work?
Let's say that this area was contaminated. What we'd do is put it under negative pressure, and we would do whatever demolition, spot demolition, to make it safe. We'd run air sampling such that the area was safe, and then other contractors would come in. They'd be fitted for respirators and work within our contained area to run their electrical or their plumbing to run through. We would do the demolition work such that we'd shoot anchors in the asbestos, and remove the asbestos and shoot anchors, clean it all up, and then we call it contractor assist. We allow those other contractors to work within those areas. You're welcome.
I guess it's a question for, I'm not sure who. Does the certification, I guess Karen, does the certification would still exist, or would that go away?
Well, and I think those are discussions we would have to have depending on the board's feeling here. I mean, currently, there is a certification tied to various licenses that allow them to do asbestos abatement only within their specific trade. Whether or not the board's desire would be to grandfather those into a new asbestos class or leave those certifications just attached to that license is something we would have to bring forward. But what we found was, in speaking with these groups, for example, a B with an asbestos certification attached, that B under current law would have to be performing 2 or more unrelated trades in order to take that contract for the asbestos abatement. And so we said, well, then you'll just have to find a flooring contractor and a plumbing contractor, whatever. If it's an individual trade, you won't be able to do it yourself. And so as they kind of explained to us what they do and the fact that, for example, let's say a flooring contractor, what this group said was, you just aren't going to find a flooring contractor with asbestos certification that's going to come in and take that one project. The insurance costs are too high, all of that. So we ran a report to look at who really has the asbestos certification, and by and large, it is the B. Now, if you go in and, of course, I've lost my report here. If you go in and take a job and it has 2 or more unrelated trades, cool, you're covered. But if a B goes in and it's just the flooring or it's just the insulation, then they're looking at either having to get all these extra certification or specialty licenses added to their B, or they have to try to go find somebody who has this specialty that's willing to do it. And based on our reports, it's a very minuscule amount of the population. For example, flooring, 4% of our flooring contractors have an asbestos certification.
So is this, is this a demolition company? I mean, is that really what we're talking about?
It is demolition of hazardous material, that contain hazardous materials.
So is it best addressed, though, as part of a demolition license? I mean, is there
So,
to
can
create a new
I
one?
answer that? The demolition license doesn't cover anything. The C-21 demolition and moving license doesn't cover renovation demolition. It only covers hard demolition, knocking down a building, and the moving a physical building. It actually does not cover demolition in a renovation. So there's a hole, and the license board can address that.
But shouldn't all demolition licenses include this? I mean, isn't there a hazmat problem with any demolition under any structure?
After a certain year.
Right. I mean, isn't it the same issue?
It is. It shouldn't. But there isn't a double.
No, it's missing. I'm absolutely agreeing it's missing. I'm just questioning where it needs to be included, not if. Well, that's whacked. I can see why you're not covered.
And we wouldn't consider a demolition contractor appropriately licensed to come tear up a floor or just tear off the roof.
Chair recognizes Matt Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, if a B contractor has the ability to set the forms for a building, build the structure for the building, and do all these other trades under his B license, if he was certified or had the C license that you're proposing for asbestos removal, why wouldn't we allow them to do all of that work in their building, in the process of demolition of hazardous materials?
Well, we will if it's 2 or more unrelated trades, excluding framing.
But is this not is this not a situation that deserves a little bit different view than the installation of all of those materials? Now you're talking about the removal of all of those materials. So my thought is that if he is a B contractor, that he should be able to remove just the flooring, or just the mastic on the flooring, or just the drywall.
That's an interesting question.
I'm hard pressed to understand he's removing it, he's not installing it.
Don, I'm going to let you comment on this.
Yeah, you raised an interesting question there, but again, we've always looked at it as
could a B contractor go in there and say, I don't want you to build anything, but go in there and take out the asbestos? And we've said no because it didn't involve two unrelated trades. They're just going in to do a single function.
Right.
So what the proposal was, and we went back to what did the certification mean? And, my opinion concluded that under the certification, it was only valid for the license with the licensee held. We talked with the asbestos contractors, and we were finding that, what had happened over the years, it had kind of evolved into, that if you had the asbestos certification, you could remove asbestos anywhere. And we're going, whoa, we have a little difference of opinion here because you're working out of you had the asbestos certification, you removed asbestos, but we're having situations where some people were removing things from roofs, from flooring, from plumbing, and they were not licensed in those areas. So we suggest that really we need to address, we need to kind of correct our licensing system to address this so they can act properly and legally. And that's where we came up with the thought that perhaps we needed a specialty certification where these people would, based upon the qualifications, would be allowed to go in there and remove asbestos wherever, basically as a sole job as opposed to having two or more unrelated trades. And that is what this group is actually coming with you to propose. We haven't worked out the details with respect to qualifications, whether or not, what qualifications they would need, because again, they potentially would be allowed to go in there and remove asbestos from a roof, from flooring, from plumbing. So again, we're looking at someone with that general specialized knowledge to go in there and do that sort of work. But again, it would be looked at as a single trade.
If I might. This is just the start of the process. If the board approves this idea, we'll go forward working with Heidi's group. We'll have hearings, probably through the licensing committee, look at the occupational analysis. There'll be a lot of scientific data we'll have to gather and come back to you on. But this is just to try to get the board's approval of staff's recommendation that we think a asbestos abatement specialty classification is appropriate, and it's a regulation. It'll probably take 18 months, but that's what we're asking today. I don't want to get too caught up in the weeds, but that's the policy question we're asking the board.
So perhaps it's best to propose this as a motion to direct staff to consider an asbestos abatement specialty classification or other means or method of giving the hazmat function its own classification. Might be under demolition, but giving them a classification however you guys see fit.
Mr. Chair, if I may, if all the questions are in.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
What's the magic position of only two unrelated trades? I'm sorry, I'm not a contractor, so I don't know why this is limited to.
Well, it's not limited to two. Under a B license, the contractor, in order to contract for the job, must involve two or more unrelated trades, not including framing, meaning that if you're a B contractor, you can't just go in and do a plumbing job. Now, you can do plumbing if it's involved in a bigger project that involves two or more unrelated trades. So when you're talking a B with an asbestos certification, if the job is just come in and tear up this floor that has asbestos in it, our position is no, that doesn't involve two or more unrelated trades. That would have to go to, for example, a C15 flooring contractor. You're not limited to two trades. It's you must have at least two trades under the B license.
Pastor, I can probably make this a little simpler. I hold an A and a B. So let's say work's getting a little slow for me and I decide I'm going to go be a rotor-rooter man and pick up some plumbing. I can't go be that, even though I hold an A and a B. However, because I hold an A and a B, I could build a house, do the plumbing, and build the seawall. But I can't just go be a plumber without getting a plumber specialty license. Is that a little clearer?
So, I mean, does that, if you eliminated that requirement, would his problem?
Good luck. I don't think that's going to happen.
Specialty contractors would come unglued,
Yeah.
probably rightfully so.
Right.
That would redefine the system, I think, would be the problem.
Knock the little guys out of the ballpark.
I have one question. Would this license include, you said this was above ground, so would it include removal, and maybe I'm begging the question, below ground? Or below I mean, are you leaving out the foundation level, or does that?
I included, when we gave the proposed language, we included both, but it's really, the trades are kind of divided into above ground guys and below ground guys, remediation guys, dirt guys, because often there's a naturally occurring asbestos that is in rocks and stuff like that, and so not necessarily has to do with construction itself, because you could be just grading a field, or you could be, it could deal with construction, but our trades are really divided into two different, above ground and below ground.
You're talking about the stuff men put there.
Yes.
I mean, not geology.
Right.
Do we have any other further comments from
Yeah,
the public?
so we're not addressing the below ground issue here then?
Well, and I think, as Steve mentioned, these are all details we would work out as we went through this process. We just need to know, is it the board's desire that staff move in the direction of looking into establishing a specialty class?
This is strictly a 30,000-foot view at this point.
Right, exactly.
So are there any other further comments from board members or the public? Ed, would you like to present your motion?
Yes. With that said, and thank you, Mr. Eli, for filling the questions from the board. Really appreciate that. I would now ask for a motion to direct staff to proceed with language to establish a new specialty classification for asbestos abatement.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? So moved. All right, the next item on the agenda is the executive...
That ends my report.
Oh, thank you, Ed. The next item on the agenda is the executive committee report, which starts with the administration and information technology update with Larry Perot and Raju Shah. Sorry about that. Parrott, sorry.
That's okay. Again, my name's Larry Parrott. I'm the Chief of Admin at the Contractor State License Board. The personnel update for the administrative division is very brief. As always, we list the examinations that are currently taking place for the contractor board, and as well as those that are continuous. As was mentioned earlier, the Enforcement Representative 1 examination is on a continuous basis and is tested for periodically throughout the year. The Enforcement Representative 2 exam is being developed, and actually this month of February we have a couple of continuous exams for information technology, as well as which include the Assistant Information Systems Analyst and Associate Information Systems Analyst. In our licensing division, this SPT 2 and 3, which is the Supervising Program Technician 2 and 3 certification list, was released in November of 2012, and which they're conducting interviews to fill some of the vacancies at this time. In testing, the Test Validation Development Specialist 1 and 2, the list was on a continuous basis. It no longer is, and that exam was developed in October 2012. And then at the bottom lists all the other continuous examinations that are being given for the CSOB. As of February 5th, 2013, there were 32.5 vacant positions at CSOB. Between November 28th and 2012 and February 5th, 2013, CSOB had 4 transfers, 7 transfers from another department, 12 promotions, and 9 new hires. The table list below includes the number of authorized PYs for each of our divisions and the number of vacancies that each one of those divisions has. In our business services, this is much better. In our business services unit within the admin division, we give a brief review of some of the activities that have taken place in 2012. The Fresno SWIFT relocated with the Fresno IC and Fresno Testing Center. There was a site search completed for the new Bakersfield office. Tenant improvements were completed, and modular furniture was ordered. The anticipated move date is next month. Our Oxnard testing office was reconfigured to ensure candidates have enough room at each workstation. Plans were completed and bids for the reconfiguration at a public counter with bulletproof glass at our San Bernardino office. Our office space in Berkeley, as I think Heidi mentioned, was selected to relocate to Oakland testing offices, and the Department of General Services is preparing final plans. The anticipated move date is May 2013. Our contracts unit executed 12 contracts. Our industry expert program has 325 current contracts utilized by the testing and enforcement divisions. Per Department of General Services fleet reduction, the CSLB purged 11 vehicles from its fleet, completed the Bureau of Automotive Repair government fleet smog check program, and finally, more than 100,000 files were purged from our file room. And that completes my update. Thanks.
Thank you, Larry.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. Concerning the purging of the vehicles, last month the board, our last meeting, the board adopted a motion to report back. Is this your report back concerning that issue of the vehicles, or is there still some more investigation going on?
Steve?
Steve?
Well, the director said if I mentioned vehicles, she'd come to my house with a tire iron, but I'll go ahead and...
Well, we'll help you out. We'll be there to...
update you anyway.
You didn't mention it. Pastor did.
Yes, thank you, Pastor. He gave me cover. Now, I think I've used the emails or weekly updates to bring you up to date on that, but basically Mike Melisa has been working with General Services. We've had all of our vehicles inspected, and the unsafe ones were condemned or surveyed or whatever. And then DGS worked with us very aggressively to lease vehicles to our staff. The reason they have to lease them for a while is because we're probably going to end up purchasing 29 new vehicles, but the contract for new vehicles is not yet in place. So it could take from 3 to 6 months from when that contract is in place to actually cars being delivered. But everything is on track now, like I said, to replace nearly half of our vehicles with new vehicles.
Do you think that will take care of the issues of liability and safety?
Oh, yes, definitely. I want to thank agency and the department and Mike Melisa and our staff is just incredible, and David and his staff. They had to do a lot of work to identify the cars and their status. Even the staff in the field had to work hard to do all the paperwork to make sure that the vehicles got the right determination of whether they were roadworthy or not. So it's going in the right direction now.
Thank you, Larry. And Raju is going to provide the IT update.
Good morning, Chairman Shafino and the board. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide this update. First, I'll give you an update on the BREEZE project. BREEZE is DCA's enterprise-wide licensing and enforcement system. And upon successful implementation, it will include online licensor, renewals, online complaints, and e-payment. It's being implemented in 3 phases, and CSLB is going to be in phase 3. February 4th, 2013, it was announced that the initial release 1 go-live date, or the planned release go-live date of February 19th was being delayed. The go-live date did not allow sufficient time to get a quality BREEZE product together, which would be acceptable to DC and release 1 boards. The BREEZE project leadership team is working with Accenture, who is the vendor on this project, to make sure they could get an achievable plan, and that will determine the new go-live date. I did find out just yesterday that that live date looks like it's going to be May, which is just a couple months now. The CSLB staff is continuing to work in preparation for the Release 3 implementation. Our staff is currently participating in discussions involving functions that directly relate with CSLB operations, and also they're participating in development of CSLB's detailed configuration requirements. They're also continuing to assist DCA by helping other boards and bureaus with their user acceptance testing and data validation. And Heidi mentioned a little bit earlier too about the testing centers that the Breeze project is involved in. We're also helping with all their desktop support, hardware, software, and PC needs over there. Next, I have an update on AB 397, and I know Karen kind of provided an update on that already, so all I would say is my IT staff worked with her staff in collaboration with them, and all the programming changes that needed to be done for the AB 397 was implemented successfully, and that was done just last month. Next update I have is for the IT help desk. Just to give you some idea on the numbers, we process about 367 tickets a month. These tickets primarily are internal. They range anywhere from desktop, laptop, printer issues to user access issues, network logons, email, etc., and any computer-related stuff. Most of these tickets come in through our intranet site. A user could actually go into the intranet site and submit a ticket, or they could call our help desk directly as well. Give you some timeline on what it takes to get this resolved. Within 15 minutes, the tickets are assessed and reviewed and assigned to somebody. And a level 1 ticket, we call it a user down priority, we get this resolved within 30 minutes. Level 2 would be something that's a little bit more complex in nature, may involve multiple units and further analysis, and we resolve those in about 60 minutes. I came from California Department of Corrections Rehabilitation, and our help desk system there, I mean, the time frame was about 4 times this. So I was extremely pleased to see the amount of time, or the least amount of time taken to resolve these tickets. The next page has a little bit of data on the tickets that came in between the December 1st, 2012 to the February 1st, 2013 timeline. Sacramento, right here, we have the most tickets generated from here. The testing sites that we mentioned, as well as the Norwalk, was the third as far as the number of tickets that came in. We in IT are also doing our efforts to greening IT and trying to reduce the carbon footprint, being more efficient, and providing energy efficiency. One of the first updates here is the IT staff consolidated several hundreds of standalone printers, fax scanners into multifunction office machines. So that eliminates a lot of waste, and we did that. This was over 3 years, and we have consolidated again hundreds of these into 37 multifunction copier machines. Out of the 13 legacy phone systems that's out there, 11 of those have been also converted to what we call voice over IP telephones. The voice over IP telephones are a lot easier to maintain. The maintenance is also much cheaper. We could add, delete things a lot faster than a legacy system, which also saves the state money. I got a couple other updates here, and I'll just kind of go down to the last one here. Enhance the electronic bond filing process, which provides letters and reports directly to the bonding companies. We used to do this via paper before, which required postage and a lot of manpower. Now we do that through Adobe PDF format and just email that to them. So it's very timely. I think we're being a lot more efficient and cutting costs. The final update I have is on the interactive voice response system. I'm really proud of this system. It's one of our high-tech solutions we have here called the Interactive Voice Response System. It's an interactive, self-directed telephone system, has a wealth of information for contractors, consumers, and any others that call it. It provides the ability to request forms or pamphlets as well that could be immediately faxed to them. There are a dozen of menu options available. I've listed some of the representative sample of some of the requests that have come in the last 3 months on page 3. And anywhere from how to become a licensed contractor to checking the status of a license application. If someone wants more information about the rules and requirements, all of those are there as well. In addition to providing these information, IVR still does have an option to get a live agent on the call, where we have in Sacramento and Norwalk, so they could definitely call that during business hours. However, this system is available 24/7 around the clock. Just to give you some idea on some numbers, last year in 2012, IVR handled over 37,000 calls per month, which equates to 444,000 calls per the year. Again, it's available anytime. So I personally think if we didn't have such a mature automated system, I think our number of live calls would have been just overwhelming and probably affect our operations. So I think this system is just serving the state of California and us really well. Top request, if you look at the next page on 4, has been for, so far, the number of callers calling in to get information on how to either become a contractor or getting general contract information. Looking at the numbers, almost 20,000 calls were taken in January on just that topic. So it looks like a lot more people are trying to get licensed and are looking for contractors, so which I think is a positive sign. That's all the update I had on this. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Any questions from the public or the board?
I got one question. Your enhanced electronic bond filing process where you provide a PDF to the insurance companies, how do they respond to you? Are they sending you paper, or can they send that electronically?
A lot of times they are just sending it electronically. Sometimes it could be by paper, but most of the times, from what I understand, it is electronic, and we are being able to send this back electronically back to them as well by email.
Good.
Yeah, so it's very timely compared to before postage and printing and all that.
Wonderful use of technology. All right, no other questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the budget update with Cindy Christensen. Sounds like a game show.
Woo! No. What did I win, Paul? Okay, the first table here just tells you where we are with the current budget year, fiscal year 2012, 2013, and as of December 31st, we have 52% of our budget left, and so we're on track, and we'll probably be reverting a significant amount of money just because we haven't been able to spend on personnel or a lot of equipment like we usually do. Let's see, for the revenue, you'll see it on the next table, and there really hasn't been much of a change. You do see that we do notice, though, that there has been an uptick in the delinquent renewal fees, so that does indicate that people that have been inactive, sitting there with a delinquent license, are now coming back to reactivate it. On the next page, you'll see our budget and adjustments, and the total budget is $58.5 million, and that includes some adjustments. The 7A adjustment basically took money out of our personnel line item and put it into our operating expenses. We had an adjustment for retirement because costs have gone up there. The column regarding employee compensation and furlough is the adjustment due to the 1 day a month furloughs, which should be ending at the end of June. And then the fourth adjustment here is for IT adjustment, and that was due to our teal expenditures. They weren't quite as high. It's a complicated adjustment, but we did get money back for that, so it's not going to be as high this year. On page 3, we have the CSLB fund condition run out through 2014 to 2015, and as indicated, since we have been reverting a significant amount of money each year, we do project out in 2014 and 15 that we'll have about 5.5 months in reserve. On the following page, you'll see the construction management education account. We have, let's see, we've expended nearly $6,800 in pro rata charges, and then for the fund condition, you'll see that we'll have about 16 months in reserve in 2014, 2015. On page, let's see, on the next page, we have the kind of an executive summary snapshot of all the programs, have the applications received. There has been a little increase in there, about 4.5%, if you look at the top page there. Original licenses issued were down about 9%. Licenses renewed, you'll see that we do have peak years, 10, 11, and 12, 13. This is a peak year, so you'll see that from the 2012 peak year to 2010, it is down about 4%. And the next few pages, we're continuing to see an increase in HIS registration, and we're probably about it for anything. Anything else, it's a highlight. Any questions? That's it.
All right, Cindy, thank you. Any questions on the budget? All right, proceed with the next item on the agenda, the 2012-2013 strategic plan update, and Steve Sand's going to take over until we get to the adjournment.
This is our last board meeting before our next strategic planning session, which will be April 23rd and 24th in San Diego. First thing I want to do is update you on the objectives for last year's plan. Basically, one, David talked about during his report. We're moving ahead on that. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 are completed. 3, the flagship publications, we have our new staff and they're working on that. They're on track for that. 9, that's an ongoing thing that Heidi and her people are, they've basically done it, so this will probably change to an ongoing objective in the future. On the next page, 10, again, new staff is working on the outreach program. 11 has changed a bit from the board policy adopted December 11th, so we talked about that earlier. That'll probably be an objective for next year, for the end of the next fiscal year, perhaps have a new specialty classification in place. 12 is completed. 13, another public affairs that they're on track for. Same with 14. 15, I think Melanie's in charge of this. That's kind of an internal objective that we'll continue to work on. A new target date there. 15 and 17 are tied in with Breeze. Raju updated you on that. This spring we'll submit our subsequent arrest unit BCP once again. When the law passed, we were told to collect data and submit a BCP to staff it. We've done it every year since. It's been denied every year since. We will continue to submit it until told not to, or until it's approved. 19 is something of, I think we should look at as part of our strategic planning session. I'll talk more about that during that meeting. But what can we do to make it easier for businesses to operate in this state while still protecting our consumer protection mandate? And then I can't believe it's sunset review next year already. So we'll have to do a report, have it ready by probably early next fall. That's something staff will start putting together later this year. So if there are no questions on the current objectives, I would like to go ahead and talk about this year's session. We're very excited to have the Department of Consumer Affairs Solid Unit, which I can't remember what that stands for, but they've had really good reviews from the other boards that they've provided strategic planning process for. And I have their brief resumes on the next page. But we have started the process. Tomorrow they'll meet with senior staff for about 3 hours to hear what we have to say, and then we'll be scheduling interviews with board members. And they have a new thing. They have an online survey that we're sending out to some of our stakeholders to get their input. So that's a first. So what I'd like to do now is turn this over to Tom Roy and Roy Fleshman to introduce themselves and kind of let you know what they have planned.
All right. My name's Tom Roy. I'm with DCA's Solid Unit, which is Strategic Organization Leadership and Individual Development. It's another long-winded acronym. Recently, we were able to backfill a couple positions that we lost last year, and we brought in some experience from the private sector and from the federal sector. And one of these employees is Roy Fleshman, who joins us from the federal sector doing strategic planning with the military. So with that, I'm going to let him kind of outline the process and the next steps.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Chairman, board members, senior staff, thanks for giving us the opportunity to give you a real short briefing on what's going to take place. We've already addressed that we'll be spending quite a bit of time at your next board meeting going over your strategic plan. Looking at your previous strategic plans, seeing your names on it, I know that you've been through this process before. The process is going to start, it's actually already started in that we've met with your staff and kind of established the guidelines with Steve and how we're going to proceed. Tomorrow we're meeting with staff management to go over focus group information, different areas of topics that they feel are important to bring forward to you on interviews coming up, and those will start on the 11th of March. You've already received an email from the registrar letting you know that we'll be contacting you, and we'll send you a follow-up email, and then we'd like to get it done during a 2-week period. Concurrently, what has been taking place since 5 days ago is a online survey for stakeholders and other key individuals which have been identified by Mr. Sands. So far, we've had 13 responses. I'm not quite sure how many that have been sent out, but those interviews, that survey, the interviews with you will be complete by the 25th of March. We'll compile that information with the information from the staff, and we'll put together into an environmental scan document, trends document, which we'll then present to you as part of our presentation when we go through the strategic planning process. That is pretty much it. I don't want to spend any more time going in depth unless you have specific questions. Great. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. All right, Steve, did you want to go over the schedule?
Hey, Aaron, do you remember the name of the hotel we're meeting at in San Diego?
It's the Best Western Hut in Rhode Island.
We met there a few years ago. It was very, very nice.
It was very, very nice, and it's state rate, and it's close to the airport. So I think you'll enjoy the location. And then in June, we're going to have our joint meeting with the Nevada board. We still don't have the location for that, but we'll probably, again, come in the night before and meet with the Nevada board, and then have our joint meeting with them like we did last year. We will be scheduling some committee meetings, but probably licensing, and well, I don't know, but there will be some committee meetings we'll be scheduling in the next few months, so you can be prepared for that. With that, are there any questions from the board on our locations and our schedule?
Any other questions or comments from the board? Or not, from the public?
Hi, I'm Joe Upchurch, District Council 16. I've asked this question before, and I've never really gotten a great answer on it. I appreciate finding out today where the next meeting is going to be at, but that information is never available anyplace, and it's not always mentioned in this meeting. It would be great to be able to schedule travel to Southern California for those of us who are in Northern California, and I'm sure vice versa for the others.
It's online, Joe. It's on our CSLB over here.
Okay.
It is on our website.
I saw that it was in San Diego. That's all it says online.
Oh.
It doesn't say the Best Western Plus in the Inner Harbor, which is a great location, but...
In our defense, we often don't know where it's going to be until the powers that be put all the contracts together and tell us where it can be.
Okay.
And that's usually the case.
Okay.
I get your frustration, but we probably don't know either.
Well, okay, I understand that, because in this particular instance, even after you've told me where it's at, I don't know if I need to fly down on Monday night because the meeting starts at 8 a.m. on Tuesday, or if I can make an early morning flight, that type of thing. It would be great to know those things. So as early as we could publish it as possible would be wonderful.
If I can clarify, like we did in the past, we'll start at 1 o'clock on the first day, and I'm not sure how far we'll go on the second day, but the plan is for people can travel that morning.
Great. Thank you.
Very welcome. In the absence of any other questions or comments, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Adjourned. Out of there.
Good job, sir.
Thank you.